The second session of the Secure Delaware Annual Conference. My name is Bob Rausch. I'm a business advisor at the Delaware Small Business Development Center. And this session's topic, how did the pandemic change cybersecurity? Brought to you by Raymond, Pompon. As the pandemic locked us all down, our threat researchers identified a change in cyber threats as some attacks declined and others amplified. Most surprisingly, we saw little innovation, but instead saw a shift in forms of fraud. This talk will present data from F5 Labs, which collects and analyzes security intelligence across the internet, as well as the Shape Intelligence Center. We will look at how the current major threat trends, bots, phishing, web hacks evolved during the pandemic. Raymond Pompon is the director of F5 Labs. With over 20 years of experience in internet security, he has worked closely with federal law enforcement in cybercrime investigations. He was directly involved in several major intrusion cases, including FBI undercover fly hook operation and the NW Hospital botnet prosecution. He is the author of IT Security Risk Control Management, an audit preparation plan published by A Press Books. Raymond, it's all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. First of all, I'm going to pre-apologize if you hear a little weird low rumble in the background. My neighbor is drilling a well. I'm in Hockessin, so we have to drill wells here. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. All right, so this is me. I won't go over a lot of stuff. I've actually been in Delaware almost 4 years now. I love this place, and it is, I've been doing security work for a long time. That's a copy of my book there. And actually, if anybody's interested in getting a review copy or more information about it, just let me know. I'll be glad to give you some pointers. It's how to build a security program up from scratch that can get through audit. And it's a lot of the bits and pieces you don't see in other books. That's kind of why I wrote it. I was kind of angry that there wasn't really a book that talked about how all these things go together. But that's kind of my perspective. I'm a longtime security guy, and I got a lot of opinions. I'm sure you'll see that today. There's all my contact info. There's my Twitter and my email. I don't mind getting emails or messages, so feel free to ping me, ask questions or comments. And as you'll see, actually later on, I'm always actually looking for guest bloggers as well for the F5 Lab site. So if you're a security professional or an aspiring one or an IT professional, I'd love to hear from you. And I'll throw a quick plug out there for the Delaware chapters of both InfraGard and ISC Squared. They're both local groups that meet at least quarterly, and it's a great place to network with other security professionals, to learn about things, how to protect your organization. There's always informative talks. There's lots of education and peer networking going on. We give you ideas, we talk about what we're seeing, what we're doing. I do a bit of mentoring, so I highly encourage you. You can easily just kind of Google those names, Delaware chapter, InfraGard, or ISC Squared, and find out about the upcoming meetings. All right, so I'm going to kind of take a shot at a lot of these questions. I realize that you've probably already heard a lot of answers about how the pandemic's changed security. I'll try to fill in some of the details there. I've got a lot of data to present, but I think even just from the keynotes and the previous breakout sessions, we've seen a very clear pattern of how the pandemic has changed security for all of us. So hopefully I can add to that conversation and maybe even answer some more questions that people may have. And this talk is kind of geared to anybody from somebody who doesn't really know a lot about IT or IT security, all the way to the deep professional. I can go into any depth or level that you want. So I'm going to kind of aim in the middle, but please ping me if you think you want to need to go deeper, or if you want me to explain something. All right. For the first part, how did it change? Oh, and by the way, these slides are available. I did submit them, so wherever we're having the slides shared, they are there, and feel free to use these graphics. Like I said, I've been a security guy for a long time, and I know one of the hardest sells for security is actually within an organization to try to convince either management or the people around you to do the right thing. So the group that I'm with, F5 Labs, we actually spend quite a bit of money producing these amazing graphics to explain these concepts to really get people's attention. So you'll see a lot of them in this. I didn't draw them, like I said, someone else does. They're very useful for internal presentations and things like that. And actually the data levels of stuff I provided also for that purpose, so that not just to inform you, but for you to carry the message to your family, to your organizations, to your leadership, to what's going on. So let's get to the first big one, and of course, worker. So Shape is now part of F5. I work for F5. It's a Seattle-based company, though we are global. I'm the Delaware guy. Shape, actually, what they do is they sit in front of logins and scrape off bots and fraud. So a lot of the really interesting data that gets shared with my team is about those logins. So this is some of the observations they saw during the pandemic itself. Was retail traffic was up. What a surprise. Money transfers were down because people weren't really sending things. Investment accounts were up because people were actually kind of moving things around in fear of recessions or financial fluctuations. Not a surprise. Travel bookings down 75%. I don't think there's any surprise there. Grocery deliveries were up 400%. How many of you have actually tried to do the grocery delivery thing? I tried to do it in the first weeks of the pandemic, and it didn't go off so well. It's gotten a lot better now. But we're seeing from our data with the things that you kind of intuitively would see in common sense what was happening. But this is interesting stuff. But what you really care about is what's going on the fraud side. And overall, when we look at this, one of the big things we look at is the hyper growth of remote access, especially in the first month of the pandemic. Everybody, had to go remote, work remote. And a lot of organizations had never done that before, or only had done like maybe 10% of their workforce. I actually, F5 is a tech company. We actually sell remote access. So we were in a great position to do this. We just sort of whipped everything out, and we were able to maintain our level of security. But you saw a lot of organizations were like, get this up, get this going any way we can. We need to get people working. And then, of course, the poor beleaguered IT guy, if those of you are out there in the audience are like, oh, this isn't secure. We can't do it this way. Oh, my God, the encryption's not good. The authentication's not good. And man was like, get it up. We've got to get it up. And so because of that, we had sort of a haphazard deployment. And I'm going to get into some of the little details that we saw about that, some of the technical nuances that attackers were taking advantage of. But this is Shodan. It gives us kind of a global view as to what's going on. We just see this huge spike of RDP, which is the remote access tool of choice for Microsoft networks. So the big thing was that because of this, we saw a major architecture change. So the attack surface grew. There's an RDP login. This is not with a VPN or anything. This is just a straight up normal login. And so essentially you have what we call the attack surface about how much of stuff you have out on the internet for your organization that can be attacked. And obviously the more, the worse. And, as people were just throwing up remote access and not thinking about security or let's say deprioritizing security in terms of just getting up, we saw just, this tremendous growth. At the same time, we saw defenses start to unlock because guess what? People were like, well, if we're going to do remote access, we need to do two-factor, we need to use tokens, we need to use the widgets on our phone with the changing numbers. And management was like, people can't get on. We have people who have never used these things before. Educators in schools, teachers need to log in and do this. We don't have the capability to roll out two-factor authentication. Granted, it may cost some money, and there are a lot of two-factor authentication tools that are free. Some of the ones that are easier to use cost money. But this is an unexpected expense, and we're in a pandemic situation where we may be facing a huge drop-off in revenue. We can't afford to do this. We can't afford to slow people down. We can't afford to teach them how to do this. I mean, I hear this from my family members about what a pain it is to do two-factor authentication. We said, oh wait, find my phone. Oh, log into my phone, log into the two-factor app, then get the code and put it in. And it was just like, ugh. So what happened was people were turning it off. Get us up, we'll secure it later. So we've expanded our footprint and we've lowered our defenses. And here's some actual percentages on that. So the actual VPN usage was up a third. And the RDP, the remote desktop, was up 41%. And then the fourth one here was VPN split tunneling. So I'll explain this a little bit. This is sort of a technical thing. It is a technical thing. So a VPN is an encrypted tunnel between your remote connection to the home base that you're talking to. And so here's how a normal full tunnel is set up. Normal, if you had the time to plan this and do this well in security, and here's the link to where I got this from, so if you want to see some more detail, you would follow the green path here, and you would connect your home machine directly to where you're going, and everything you would do. So all your work would be in this really cool encrypted tunnel, so no bad guys could poke into it and see what you're doing. And the cool thing is that you could actually, because the tunnel is going from your machine to your organization and coming back, your organization can see everything you're doing. So it actually, if it sees malware or phishing or spam in that connection as you're going out to sites, it can stop it, it can scan it, it can delete it, it can sound the alarm. Can you see the problem though? Is like you now have all this remote access that you've never had before, and now all these people are needing to go to all these places, do all these Zoom sessions, and suddenly your bandwidth needs just explode. And it's like, well, we don't, it's bad enough that we have to actually do all this stuff and have all these connections, but now we've got all these people doing remote access, and then they're doing their normal internet traffic, and that's coming back up to the company, being filtered and scanned and going back out. That's essentially tripling our bandwidth. We can't handle it. So they do a thing called split tunneling. They said, just for the stuff you need to do with our company, we're going to encrypt and put in the VPN tunnel, and everything else, just do it normally as if you're sitting at home on your home computer. Seems reasonable. But when you lose this inspection capability, you lose the ability to stop the malware, to stop the phishing. If people are going to sites and clicking on things they shouldn't have, and you can't block that. So this kind of comes back to like we've expanded our footprint, we've taken away two-factor authentication for a lot of folks, and now we're not even expecting a lot of traffic that we normally would. So we essentially have now really ramped the risk up. And as I was saying, like, people were using RDP. Like, this is before the pandemic, it was a top target. Now imagine what it looks like now. It's a huge, huge bullseye. And how do bad guys take advantage of all those RDP logins? Well, you may have heard this already today a bunch. There's an attack called Credential Stuff, meaning that your password and logins were probably stolen somewhere else. In fact, if you're on LinkedIn or Yahoo, they have these gigantic breaches. And what do they breach? They breach everybody's usernames and passwords for Yahoo Mail or your LinkedIn passwords. And what happens is people will use the same password for everything. And so if they've got your email address, which is your username, and they've got your password, they load it up into a big bot, and then they just try it on all these sites. Hey, here's an RDP site for Billy Bob, chemicals.com. Well, I have a bunch of emails in this big, 1 trillion database of stolen credit login credentials that I got off the dark web, and I see a bunch of BillyBobChemical.com email addresses and passwords. I'm going to try them on their remote login site, and it's not protected by a VPN, and I'm just going to sit there and try it. And hey, it's only a 3% success rate, but I've got billions of these things to try, and they'll get in and cause all kinds of mayhem, and we'll get into some of the specific mayhem they were causing. So, we see this gigantic growth in credential stuffing attacks. And of course, this is being reflected in the news. Just tons and tons of alerts going, hey, look at this. All this exposed logins, people are just brute forcing. They're trying all kinds of different passwords and usernames, and they're getting in. They're breaking in. They're stealing data. They're loading ransomware. They're doing all kinds of horrible stuff. So, so this is like sort of your first big warning about what to do to protect yourself is please don't use the same password between different sites. And that's, it's a great defense, a very simple one. We hear a lot of people talking about using password managers and things like that to just maintain different passwords for different sites. But the attacks have really ramped up in that area. So what new sites? So this is our ThingBot. Like I said, we spent a lot of money on artwork and producing some pretty cool, interesting things. So this represents sort of all the evil bots running around out there. We have a number of these that are named after famous botnets. But one thing you notice is we put a mask on him. So this is really what we're seeing. It's like there aren't any really new cyber threats that have come from the pandemic. We've just seen a reskinning of the same old stuff we've been seeing, but they put sort of a pandemic spin on it. And I think you've definitely heard that theme today. But I'm going to give you some of the details behind that. So F5, we have a security incident response team. That's what Cert stands for. So if you have an F5 product of any kind, most people have big IP load balancers, but we sell many things, firewalls, things like that. You can actually call our security incident response team. It's part of your built-in support contract. And our people will help you for free. It's part of everything you get. And they'll actually, help you do some mitigation. They'll show you how to reconfigure to block the attack. And F5, if you haven't heard of them, we're a giant company that's been around since the 90s. And so we're sitting inside the Fortune 500 of all these huge sites. So basically, what I get from the Cert is they give me data for my threat research, and I get to kind of get a Windows eye view of what's going on in the internet because of our massive footprint. So what I did is I said, okay, let's look at all the incidents that happened during the pandemic and start mapping them out as what's going on. So here's the key months of the pandemic. And you can see previous years, we kind of get an up and down. There's usually an uptick in attacks during the end of the year, beginning of the year, the holiday season. And it's usually kind of slower during spring and summer. For some reason, hackers like to take the time off and go fishing or whatever. So same thing, it's, there's a little bit of spike sometimes during the summer. Usually these are attributed to specific campaigns. Campaign is usually a group of attackers deciding they've got a particular cool scam going. Now take a look at this year. We see an unprecedented spike of attacks right during the middle of the lockdown. And actually they're starting to spike up again now. So this is one of the first clues that the attack landscape has changed. Is, instead of a lull, we now see a big spike. And this is just reported incidents, people calling in. We're going to see the same shaped curve again and again as I look at different type of attack data. So, you hear the news out there, you've been hearing people talking about the attacks changed and ramped up during the pandemic. Absolutely true. I have data to prove it. So the other thing is we actually sit in front of phishing attacks and do phishing takedowns of sites and block phishing at the portal. Remember I talked about that inspection thing where you do the tunnel and it goes back to the company and you scrape it off. So we actually have some of that technology. So I get all the data on what's happening on there, or where the phishing is going on and how much we're seeing. Same kind of thing. So now I'm just going to average the past 5 years into a nice graph. Same thing. You get the kind of like, hey, let's relax over spring and summer and do some real fishing and catch some trout or enjoy some hiking or whatever. And then in 2020, boom, giant big spike again. And especially right there, at the heart of the pandemic, we see a huge ramp up in phishing, unprecedented levels of phishing. I mean, what is going on here? There's definitely something nasty going on with these phishing attacks. And I think you've already heard today that basically we're seeing a ton of pandemic-related phishes. So these are actual subject lines from phishing lures. I think you may have seen a few of these today, but one of the things that I want to demonstrate is this. So if you're the person running the email servers looking to block this stuff and try to stop it, it's not like you can put COVID-19 or coronavirus in your spam blockers, because there might actually be legit email that'll go in there. And but all of these subject lines look kind of legit, but there are actual phishing lures. And you can see it's just, it was relentless. And at the same time, people are very hungry for information, especially in the first month. I mean, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know, what the efficacy was for various measures. So people were just like really hungry, clicking on everything. Oops. And so one of the things that bad guys do as well is they're phishing sites so that, they're luring you to a website for a scam or to steal your credentials or to push software on you that's loaded with ransomware or malware, is they'll put a certificate on it. So the certificate is that little lock where you see that say, hey, the sites are encrypted. And it's come to mean for a lot of people, the site's a legit site. So of course attackers know that. So they're out there buying sites that are encrypted so they can have a little lock and look legit. So we started tracking is the name of those, the sites, billybobchemical.com. So we're looking at like, okay, let's look at all the certificates out there in the universe that have the word COVID or Corona in them. And here's what we see. Same thing, big ramp up. And these are actually legitimate or legitimately identified malware and phishing sites. This isn't just, normal charities or things like that information. No, we know these sites are bad. And you can see that, yep, we definitely, there was a reskin, that same hump again of like ramp up of activity. And still going on. Here's an actual email. So here we have the, in a lot of cases, they're using the real logos. Sometimes, you'll see the misspellings, but you're also now seeing where they're just cloning the actual emails as close as they can, oftentimes with real links back, so they look a lot better. You can see that the domain's a little bit phony here, who-pc.com, but a normal person may not know that that's not right. So, and of course, hey, look, there's an attachment here. I wonder what's in that attachment. It's probably some nasty ransomware. But these are all the sites that we saw that were being impersonated in emails. And then I kind of wanted to get a little bit technical here because we're seeing a lot of typo squatting going on too. It's another way to just sort of fake out an email or to fake out a site. So you'll see like, okay, so I'm going to go after this site called legitbank.com. And I'm going to go hijack this other site here because, hey, it's a stupid blog about little white fluffy dogs. White fluffy dogs, Phishing. And I'm going to use this blog that I took over, and I'm going to turn it into a fake site for Legit Bank. A couple different ways I can do that. One, like I said earlier, I could just go and buy a certificate called Legit Bank maybe, and people who aren't reading really fast will see like, oh, Legit Bank, yeah, that's my bank, and we'll go there. Okay, I don't even need the blog, the Phishing thing to do that. But what you often see more is to do these insertions here. Well, you'll take the Phishing bot.com, and then you'll put Legit Bank in there as like the trailing URL for the actual, the website itself. So when people actually bring the site up, they'll see this. They'll see Legit Bank login. They'll not notice that they're actually on a blog that's been taken over. Or the other one is they'll actually insert into here. So the Phishing bot is the actual blog, but they've added this little piece here, Legit Bank, and maybe even a little enticement here with this exciting offer. So these are all really, great fake outs that people will be misled on and end up getting sucked into some sort of horrible scam. So this is, a great chance to really talk to people, talk to your users, your organization about looking at these things. It's not just like looking for the legit name in the URL, but it's rather complicated. And honestly, my takeaway for some of this is like some users are never going to understand the difference. They're going to think this is real. If anybody has got older family members, it looks completely real, and you're never going to be able to teach them to untangle this stuff. It's really difficult. What you really kind of need to move to is to expect people to fall for this and start to harden your infrastructure itself. Like, okay, if they got malware, if their information got out, how bad would that be? And that's where we get back to that idea of using a two-factor. They steal my login. Doesn't matter. They need my phone to get in. My data may not be all sitting on my hard drive. It may be somewhere else safer. And as I mentioned earlier, what's coming in on all these phishing and all this malware? It's really nasty stuff. It's malware. We've seen a huge multiplication of malware across the board. More of our great artwork here. So especially in the mobile world as well. So basically, attackers are loading these nasty little things that come down to through phishing, and they insert themselves into your login. So when you're logging into your shopping site, to your banking site, they're actually trying to steal your credentials. Here's an actual site that's been scraped. So they're doing this injection. So you're logging in legitimately, but the software that's running on your phone or your computer is intercepting the connection locally. You don't even know it, and throwing up a new screen that you see and grabbing your information. And then, of course, after they've grabbed your information, they're sending it on to your legit bank. So you're doing your transaction, you may not realize it. Hey, we just stole your credit card number. We just stole your login. And it's all because this malware is running on your machine that you got sucked down because you clicked on some link. So what other kind of fraud schemes are we seeing? There was a big attack called Scattered Canary. I think we some of the other earlier breakout sessions were talking a little bit about the Nigerian scammers. This was sort of associated with them, a Nigerian fraud ring. So basically, the early days of the stimulus payments, there was a lot of unemployment. This actually hit in Washington State, in Seattle, where I used to live, and where F5 headquarters is, where we saw a big surge in essentially people logging in and taking advantage of that those payments. And same thing as we talked about with the footprints and the let's get remote access out there and worry about security later. There was also a push like let's get money in people's hands so they can get out and get working, they can feed their families. So some of the locks and the checks were taken off to make this go faster. So criminals swooped in and started stealing the money. And actually at the bottom here, you can see a link here, some more details on this attack and what you can do about locking down your credit if your information was stolen. So they gave it a cool name, Scattered Canary, but it was really just scams. And it hit Washington State first, but it started to spread to other states as well. And basically there was a lot of kind of second guessing and thinking about, okay, how are we actually going to roll these stimulus systems out, and what kind of protections are we going to put in place? And in some ways, we're still kind of figuring that out. But it's an ongoing scam. And then the other thing we saw was to go on at the other thing, because there's a whole bunch more online shopping going on. There's everybody was ordering food out instead of going to restaurants and having things delivered. So bad guys are also using all the data they've stolen through phishing and Credential Stuff to create synthetic identities. They would actually create an account for you or pose as you. Sometimes they would even lure you online. So they'll put up an ad that says, hey, get a discount on ordering food. Just do it through us. And of course, you'll go to their site, put in your information for the food order, and they'll actually do the order for you. But they're going to use a stolen credit card instead of and then of course they've stolen your credit card too. And so they're actually using this to pull some new scams. The other one too is you see, everybody's starting to lose their jobs or getting furloughed. So there's higher unemployment. So you see a lot more money mule recruitment. So these are job ads essentially from fraudsters are using for folks, like how do they take advantage of your stolen credit card? Well, they order stuff on the internet and have it shipped, and then they sell it for money. Well, the money mule, of course, is the in-between person, and the job that you hired, you get, obviously it's not going to say money mule, but it'll be like you're a buyer or you're a shipper. And what you do is the job is that you'll actually go and order stuff online, or stuff will be ordered for you and will show up at your house, and your job is to take it out of the box and then reship it to somewhere else place. Oh, and by the way, we need your financial information too, because we're going to be transferring you money for these orders, as well as you're going to be paying back out, and you get to keep a percentage. And it's all a scam. And of course, you're not only are you participating in the crime, but they're also have stolen your financial information, so they're going to drain your account as well. So see a lot more of that going on. It was always going on, but it's been really ramped up. This is another one of our artworks. You see it's a rat, because it's really just dirty business here to take advantage of people in the pandemic. This is from our Shape folks. So this is actually, you can see we're actually watching a transaction. It's watching millions of transactions at a site, and the systems are detecting flagging bot accounts. So this is fake logins, synthetic identities, things like this. This is a fraud attack on a loyalty program, and you can see we're blocking it, and then that actually ramps back up again, because bad guys will actually reconfigure their tools to try to slip between the defenses, and then there's sort of a back and forth war before they're eventually locked out. But it's it's highly automated, and it's sort of like our bots versus their bots. The good news is with our bots, the defending bots, is we have the information, the high level intelligence about what everybody's doing, and lots of artificial intelligence to try to figure out what they look like, so that we can share that information and we can stop them. But you can see the huge amount of traffic that is being flooded, millions of attempts, and lots of fake stuff going on. So moving on for like, we keep talking about the new normal, and I'm sorry I use that phrase because it really is overdone now. But what I really want to talk about is like we've talked a lot about these pandemic scams and things like that. But in fact, we're starting to see those transition to something else because it's old news. We're moving on to new things, and so the bad guys are reskinning again. Phishing has evolved from like the old lures were always the bank notices and the invoice and the fake shipping. That during the pandemic, we saw the coronavirus stuff and the PPE stuff and the donations. Now we're seeing phishing lures that are all about politics or hot topics in the news. So we saw a big spike of BLM related lures, and they're both sides. It doesn't matter which side of the argument you're on. They're using that to get you to click something. And now, of course, we're seeing a lot of election-related stuff. And we actually created some new artwork for that. So whatever the hot topic is, whatever it is that's going to make you click, that's what they're going to use to skin their scams and their phish. So it's always something to look out for. It's always something to kind of be on your guard. And we've seen a huge ramp up in ransomware lately. This is actually from a dark website where they're advertising ransomware as a service. So you don't even have to be a super hacker. You could just go pay $350 here in Bitcoin and buy this kit, and it's custom made. And if you've sort of seen the headlines, you've seen that this ransomware is taking out schools and government organizations and hospitals. And it's getting rather catastrophic. It's actually killing people because you shut down a hospital and things can't function. At the beginning of this, we talked about my background, and Robert mentioned the NW, the Northwest Hospital case. This was a case I worked on in 2005. It was one of the first hospitals shut down by a worm, what we now call malware, but it was essentially a self-replicating computer virus, and it shut down an entire hospital. And luckily, no one died. I mean, they did have a really bad time, and I actually worked with them and the FBI, and they actually brought the people to justice. If you have any more details on that, send me a note, and I have a full paper talking about the case and how they were tracked down. But that was 15 years ago, and now hospitals are regularly hit with ransomware, shutting them down. And how are they getting in? It's phishing. Hey, we're all clicking on these things. It's kind of universal. Everybody's at home. We're not inspecting. We don't have all of our two factors all set up to date. So why not? It's a great delivery mechanism. And then, of course, all those RDPs out there for remote login. Again, easy way to get in. Log in with a stolen credential or brute force and load your malware. We're even seeing an evolution now where gangs are breaking into a site and then just selling access on the open. Hey, like, I broke into this organization. Who wants it? And the ransomware folks are like, I don't even need to break in anymore. I've got, I'll go here and buy some ransomware, and I've got to buy some access, and then I'll set up my scam and encrypt all their data and make them pay, $50,000 to unlock it. So, it's a booming business right now. And if you look at how these cyber criminals are structuring their work, it is actually very boring. It looks like a business. They have personnel, they have support people, they have help desks, they have marketing people. I mean, obviously somebody had designed this website here and advertised it. It looks like a complete normal business, but except where it's all about ripping you off. The other last way they get in, a common way, is unpatched vulnerabilities. You probably have heard already today, and we'll continue to hear this. You need to patch your stuff. We know it's not easy. I, ran IT security for decades. It's one thing to say, like, yeah, patch all the desktops and the phones. It's another thing to patch the servers and the stuff that can't ever go down. I know that's a real pain. Sorry. What you want to look for is the popular vulnerabilities that are being used by ransomware. And you could literally just Google that. Just, if you're looking at like a new patch comes out, you could actually type the name of the patch in. They often have this CVE number in them. You could type that CVE number in. It's the name of the vulnerability the patch takes care of. And type the word ransomware. And you will see and say, like, hey, this vulnerability is being used for ransomware right now. Okay, I will patch that. That's a high priority. And there's more advice on our website. I'll give you an URL on how to do that. But that's the usual way you want to kind of manage that thing. Here's some more information on ransomware. They're going after the folks who know that they need to pay. Schools need to stay online for remote learning. So, of course, they're going to pay. And they're often It's not to say that schools are well funded, but they may have government entities behind them, so they could probably pay a little bit more than a small business. Healthcare, so cities itself, and the payment sizes are going way up. The other important point here too is we're seeing a trend in ransomware attacks where they break in and they wait. They're not going to immediately start encrypting all your data and shutting you down. They're actually going to stay on your network. They're going to figure out where all the pain points are. They're going to delete your backups. They're going to go to your domain controllers, which control everything on your network. And it's such at the level, like if they can seize control of those things, when it comes to time to flip the switch, they can get it all in one shot, as opposed to watching a wave of ransomware move through your organization. They'll take the whole thing out at once. So you'll actually see victim, there's something funny going on my network, and then boom, all their screens pop up and say, pay us our $150,000 in Bitcoin. So they're getting much smarter. And why not? There's a lot of money involved. This isn't something you want to do haphazardly. The case I talked about, the Northwest Hospital case 15 years ago, that was completely haphazard. They didn't mean to hit a hospital. They didn't mean to cause that much damage, but now they know exactly what they're doing. They know how much money they're making. They're going to cause maximum amount of damage because they know you will pay that. And they'll even size the ransomware payment based on the organization. If you're a small mom and pop, maybe you'll just get hit up for like 10,000 or 15,000 or 5,000. Whereas if you're a large organization, we've seen the ransoms go up into the millions. That's all because they're doing their homework. They're taking the time. They have specialists who do this. The other kind of, it's not to be confused with ransomware, but it's another form of cyber extortion. There's a group of attackers going around. They'll do a denial of service attack on your site. So they'll flood your website with garbage, wait for it to fall over, or try to, essentially you'll see the attack. Then they'll send you an email saying, hey, we're Fancy Bear. You may know us as these cool Russian hackers. And you need to pay us a bunch of money or we're going to do it again. And they aren't actually Fancy Bear, because Fancy Bear are what we call an advanced attacker. They're like super spy attackers that do things like break in and steal email or secrets. But these are just a group of attackers who are just looking to scam you out of money because they can launch a denial of service attack. And how do they do this denial of service attack? Well, they phished a whole bunch of people and they have a bunch of bots. So they're controlling hundreds of thousands, millions of machines across the internet. And from their controls, they can actually set up and go, at this time, flood this website with garbage. And boom, they will blast you until you get knocked offline. We have a much more details on the size of the attacks and the frequency, but I just didn't have time to get into today. I just kind of want to show you that this stuff is going on. It's becoming more and more rampant. Here's sort of like an overview, because F5 actually does a lot of DDoS defense, but you can see we see an overall growth in DDoS attacks. So basically, attackers are looking for ways to make money during the pandemic, just like everybody else. And then if you've been on any kind of social media, you see that there's all kinds of disinformation going on, fake news, often being put out by fake accounts. Their fake accounts are creating the fake news. More often than not, they're amplifying it. They're of course all those stolen usernames and passwords and phish things. They actually will build up a fake account and give it, let's say, a lived-in feel. So they'll use it, they'll like things, so they'll do some fake posts, and then they'll sell it and then put it into these giant botnets. And here's a link here for the Pod People site. They're doing research for this. But if you want to talk about like the new normal or what we're going to see in the future, more and more of this, more and more of what you see online is going to be fake, bot-generated, stolen accounts, fake accounts. And of course, again, it's a race between the good guys and the bad guys to try to weed this stuff out. It's are you real, are you not? It's all kind of like Blade Runner. And what do we do about this? How do we fight back? Like I said, the two big things you need to worry about is phishing and password guessing. So, two-factor, any factor is better than just a password. Even if you're just doing passwords, you can at least do a better job of that by not reusing passwords, picking good, strong, somewhat apparently random passwords. And it's kind of funny because I actually advocate writing them down, because who's going to break into your house and find a Post-it note that may be randomly shoved in your desk somewhere? At least, the bad guys have to risk getting eaten by my dogs to break into my house to get my password. But it's, as opposed to them breaking into all these sites and stealing it or getting somebody tricked with a phish. But obviously you want to move to a lot better defense of like two-factor as soon as you can. And here's some more overview. I told you about you can prioritize your patching. There's a YouTube video here that actually explains it and a more detailed story behind that. It's strong authentication. You see a lot of the email attachments that are coming in. They'll use macros and Word documents. That's a common thing. And then any kind of transactions requests that come in via email should be verified. There's been cases I've worked where you see a thing where like the CEO gets an email like, hey, can you pay this invoice? And they're just blindly forwarded on to the CFO. It says, hey, pay this invoice. And the CFO says, oh, that came from the CEO. It said pay it, so I'll pay it. And then they get ripped off, and it'd be like, oh, did you say, why did you do that? And it's like, well, you told me to do that. And it's like, oh, I thought you were gonna check them. And no, I thought you checked them. And then next thing you know, they're off, millions of dollars that somebody just wire transferred to Europe. So anything that comes in where you're not face to face with somebody, you need to verify. And of course, they're impersonating people. A lot of companies, their business partners and relationships are often available on social media or on their website, so scammers know that. And then for individuals, we have a bunch of articles there on the F5 Labs site that will give you advice on how to do these things. If you can freeze or lock your credit, that actually would be a great way to not get sucked into a lot of these scams, and then you just basically unfreeze it when it's time to take out a loan. It's hard to patch servers. It's really easy to patch your computer or your phone. It's just a little updater. And anything that touches the internet, like your browsers, those should be patched as well, because a lot of those phishing sites, they're actually trying to load malware through the browser, and having a patched browser makes that a lot harder. And people often kind of forget about the old standby antivirus software. I got my start in computer security back in the 80s with antivirus software. Everybody remembers the Stone virus that came out on these things called floppy disks. But antivirus software, a lot of people will buy a computer and it comes with 30 days or 90 days of free antivirus software, and they don't realize that it's 30 or 90 days, and like 2 years later that it's expired. So you do actually need to buy it and update it. It actually will go a long way to stopping some of this stuff. It's not going to stop everything, but it's better than nothing. And so you add up enough of these defenses and things in place, and you can actually make a significant defense. And of course, misinformation. This is sort of like check before you share something. You get something in social media or email. Somebody says, it's usually the tip off is, is it outrageous and make you angry? Check it before you forward that on, because it may be fake. It may be, you see people sharing satire sites thinking that's real. So please verify. And of course, come to f5labs.com, where you can see all our research and beautiful graphics. There's no advertising, there's no gating, meaning you don't have to give us any information to get this. So part of my job is just really to share information with the public on what you can do about this. And we do a lot of different research areas, a lot of different stuff available. And of course, we're out everywhere that you want to be, Twitter, LinkedIn, RSS feed. You can actually sign up for an email, and all you'll get in the email is just what our newest stories are, and my contact information is there. So with that, I want to take any questions or comments.
There was one so far in the chat. Since so many people are out of work due to the pandemic, and many are looking for jobs online via job boards, what advice would you recommend for people to watch out for?
It's kind of an old chestnut, but it's one of those, if it sounds to be too good to be true, it is. I kind of talked about how you see how the money mules works. That's often a common one. Another one is like, we actually had people impersonating F5 asking people for money or asking people for their personal information. So it'd be like, hey, you would go to a job board and look for a job. This was the opposite. They were on social media with all the graphics for F5, going to people randomly in chat, going, "Hey, I'm looking to hire somebody as personal assistant, and can you fill out this form and give us a social security number and all your information? And I'm going to do a virtual interview with you and hire you, and all I need, your bank account information so you can get your first paycheck. We're going to give you a big banking bonus. And it was like, who in the world is going to be hiring people this way? Who's going to like randomly pick, you know, instead of you coming to them, they're coming to you to ask you for a job. And then the pay was way out of scale too. It was like, you know, a 6-figure income job to be a virtual secretary assistant to one of our executives. And of course, the executive itself was doing the hiring, apparently in social media. So it was like, okay, there's like so many red flags here. So that's one of the things. It's like, you know, people have that gut feeling about like, this sounds kind of funny, but you know, I really need this job and it sounds really good. And they kind of override that. And then they kind of, you know, they get pulled into it and, you know, then they get ripped off. So, you know, I would say that's one of the things. It's like, if it looks too good to be true, I mean, look for those red flags, trust your gut. Oftentimes in hindsight, you're like, oh man, yeah, why did I fall for that? And of course, then they feel embarrassed and don't want to talk about it. But you know, being aware that that's going on is, I think, a big step. It's just like, you know, double check everything. If there's somebody's talking about hiring you, go to the actual website. If it was F5 hiring you, go to f5.com and go to the career site and click on the job link. Don't click on the link in the email or that. Look to see if it's a legit job offer. I think that'll tell you a lot.
All right, that's all the questions I see. There was a question about a copy of the PowerPoint. All those copies of the PowerPoints are up on the Secure Delaware website. If you click on the title of each of the presentations that you want to look at, see the PowerPoints of, you can see them, you can download them. There'll also be recordings posted on the Secure Delaware website as well. And so, Bob, I think we can wrap it up.
Well, thanks, Raymond, for a great presentation. I want to remind all the participants in this session that you can return to the general session, which will have a guest speaker there. I believe it's on employment scams. So you all have a great day and be safe, both inside and outside.